Hello, I am Superintendent Addison Davis, and I want to welcome everyone to a Dialogue with Davis, a live town hall experience focused on our reopening plan in Hillsborough County Public Schools. I have a team of district leaders here with me this evening to answer any and many questions that were submitted today. I want to thank the parents, the family members, and employees for your patience while we navigate through our uncertain time. I also want to acknowledge our partners, such as Tampa General Hospital and USF Health, as they help review our plan and provide invulnerable guidance on how we can best ensure the safety and health of every one of our students during our reopening plan. Tonight, we'll be utilizing our Pigeonhole Live, an interactive mobile website where you can submit questions to our team members to answer during this event. You can also vote on any of your questions that interest you. If you want to ask questions anytime during the presentation, just go to pigeonhole.at and type in the password, which is back to school. Questions with the highest number of votes will stand a better chance of getting answered during our Q&A. We've already have so many questions that were submitted throughout the day, and we thank you. But first, we would like to share a message from our Spanish-speaking audience. Mr. Pablo.
Bienvenidos a Dialogue with Davis. Esta noche estaremos dando respuestas a sus preguntas más comunes sobre nuestro plan de reapertura. Respuestas estarán en nuestro website, hillsboroschools.org, y será transmitida con subtítulos en español después del evento en vivo. Gracias por participar en estas importantes conversaciones.
All right, thank you so very much, sir. We will make certain that we go ahead and we get jumping right into our questions. Once again, the questions have been rated and voted upon, and we will take the ones that have the greatest weight and answer those questions and get to as much as we can. We will start promptly right now at 5:30 and transition to 6:30. We'll have an hour-long conversation. All right, first question. Please outline exactly the procedures that will be taken if and when a child or teacher or aide or admin becomes symptomatic and then will test positive. What exactly happens? What will the district do during this process? And we're going to transition to our Chief of Climate and Culture, which would be Mrs. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, and that's a really, really important question, and I know parents are really interested in answers to that question. What's important to note is that each person, students and staff members, will be expected to self-assess each day before they report to the school buildings. When they do this, they will ask themselves some really important questions. Whether or not they have in the last 72 hours had a fever of 100.4 and chills, whether there's a cough or shortness of breath, whether there's new loss of taste or smell, and whether or not there's nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. But also it's important to note whether or not in the last 14 days, this person, anyone has been in close contact, and that could include with a family member who has tested positive for COVID. For someone if that person has also been quarantined for COVID, has traveled abroad to an area of a country where self-quarantine is recommended, or if this person has a pending COVID-19 test. So we want everyone to, prior to coming to school, ask those really critical questions. However, if once a student or a staff member reports to work and they become symptomatic, we will immediately send that student or staff member to the clinic to see the school nurse. There they will be placed in a room that is a room specifically for children and adults who are exhibiting symptoms for COVID-19. We will contact the parent to pick up the student or tell the staff member, but in each case, they will need to confer with their healthcare professional, healthcare provider. So what happens when someone, a student or staff member, tests positive for COVID? Immediately, they are to contact the principal of the school. The principal will then contact their regional superintendent. The regional superintendent will contact our newly identified COVID commander, COVID administrator, who will then work with the principal to identify where the student may have been in the building and who they may have come into contact with. And this person will immediately contact our supervisor of school health services, who will work in collaboration with the Department of Health to determine what will be the next steps, specifically sending that person, determining whether or not how long they will need to be out of school. Also, this COVID administrator will communicate with our Director of Safety and Risk Management to determine what space in our school buildings will need to be cleaned and sanitized. Also, when that scheduled sanitation and cleaning will take place. But when we also communicate this information, we're going to work through our Chief of Communications and Media Relations. She will work with our superintendent, who will be immediately notified, who will then notify each of our school board members. A letter will be provided to those people who have come into direct contact with the person who has tested positive for COVID, and another letter will be provided to all other students and staff members at the school, notifying them that someone at the school has tested positive. It is important to us that we are completely transparent and that we keep our parents informed of each incident that may occur at our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, and we greatly appreciate it. And as Ms. Brown talked about, we're going to be as transparent as we can. We're going to take immediate action steps and be thorough in this process. One thing we want to make certain that our parents and our employees understand: if you do have symptoms in any way, shape, or form, please stay home. We will work with you to make certain that we provide you the necessary support that you need for learners. But, we just make certain that you contact your school and let them know. We'll make sure we get all of the necessary work while you are out. And then we will coordinate. If you are continuing to feel well, we'll coordinate your makeup work along with the policy that we implement within our student handbook. Going back to, so thank you. So going to the next question, is there a possibility of extending the start date of school until we see at least 14 days of no new cases? At this time, the answer to that question is just not possible. We have an emergency order that we were extended by the Florida Department of Education that says we must start school, prior to September. Therefore, my recommendation was to the board last week to move and transition back from August the 10th through August the 24th. And that's solely to allow us to continue to make certain that we provide ongoing professional development to our employees. And that professional development would be an extensive about new initiative, new projects, related to our work, providing and extending high quality instruction, but also about understanding and meeting with staff members to talk about new protocols and procedures related to safety and health, how we will transition through common areas, how we will make certain that we have social distance within our classrooms in order to protect our learners, and then also talk about the new sanitation stations within our classes and how we will continue to provide ongoing education about the right steps to make certain that we focus on hygiene. So at this time, we are unable to create that ask, but thank you for creating a question. Next question. If you start brick and mortar, but decide due to safety reasons you do not feel comfortable anymore, can you switch to e-learning after school starts? I'm going to transition to the Deputy Superintendent of Instruction. That is Mr. Terry Connor.
So good evening. We want to be reminded that we want to be as flexible as possible during these uncertain times. When it comes to making a decision as important as the delivery method of instruction for your child, we understand that it weighs heavy on our families. As we get to the start of school, it is very important that we confirm our decision making and whether we want to start brick and mortar or e-learning, because it really does dictate for us where to put our staff to meet the needs of all students. So to answer the question, once you commit, we want you to stick with the commitment, but we will look at by case basis. We'll take a look if there are extenuating circumstances for students on the feasibility of transitioning students from brick and mortar to e-learning. Same for e-learning to brick and mortar. We know if a student is not being successful in the class, that we will provide an opportunity on a case-by-case basis for our students to transition back into the brick and mortar classroom so that they can receive that face-to-face instruction.
Thank you, sir. And to piggyback off of this question, this is all about making certain we have the right allocations for our schools, and we have to make certain that we comply with class size. And we just can't make certain if we have student stations available potentially that we within the schedule we can look at it, but by case basis. But overall, you know, the school district is a school district of choice, meaning that we look at the class size average overall at the school, and we've got to make certain we stay within those guidelines. So making sure if students are popping in and out of e-learning and in and out of brick and mortar, that could potentially set us over the class size, which would be a financial impact to the district, which Hillsborough County has done a really nice job staying within those parameters. But once again, we'll continue to look at a case-by-case basis to be able to help our learners and our families as much and often as we can. All right, next question. What steps are being taken to ensure that HVAC systems are not spreading contaminated air through school buildings? At this time, I'm going to go to the Chief of Operations, Mr. Chris Farkas.
Thank you, Superintendent, for the opportunity. I want to ensure and assure all the public that we do have particle filters in every single one of our air conditioning systems. The MERV rating you'll hear, the MERV is the minimum efficiency reporting value. The MERV goes all the way from 1 up to 20 and 23. We currently have MERV 7 and 8 filters at least in every single one of our air conditioning systems. But we are looking at increasing that. The reality is that we have those change on a quarterly basis. We're looking at both MERV 13 filters, UVC light, and ionization to try to improve this. We always feel like we can get better, and we'll continue to do so. But right now, I want to assure the public that we do have MERV filters in every single one of our air conditioning systems that help take those particles out of the air. But we do believe there's an opportunity to get better, and we'll continue to look at that. We had a meeting with Hillsborough County government to see what they're doing, to see how we can partner in shelters and other areas to make sure that we can do whatever we can to keep our kids safe.
Thank you, sir. And then we'll have an aggressive, implementation plan for changing filters along the way. So, that will be a part of our professional learning over the coming weeks with our staff to make certain they understand timeline to be able to have more, greater frequent checks to make certain the filters are continually changed to protect every one of our students and our adults along the way. All right, next question. What precautions are being put in place for pre-planning for teachers? Are principals being told to hold virtual meetings rather than full staff meetings? So right now, if the board approves on Thursday that we transition back to and push to delay the school year to the 24th, we will use that time for professional development. That time will not only be to talk about and provide ongoing professional development for Canvas, for iReady, for Achieve, for content, but more importantly, it's about safety protocols. We will leverage and discuss, how everyone, within our schools will have to take an inclusive approach to be able to address making certain that we are on page with how we function and how we circulate throughout the school. How are we going to interact with common areas? How are we going to look to make certain that we continue to update and have sufficient materials within our restrooms? What are we going to do if we come across a student that has symptoms? How are we going to discuss and identify the COVID league within our schools? How are we going to interact with a COVID commander at the district level? And what safety and security is going to take place as they come and create and provide ongoing cleaning protocols within our schools along the way. So we'll continue to have an array of professional learning opportunities during that time, if approved by the board. And I think it's just a smarter way of work for us not to rush into it, for us to make certain that we get this right. As relates to, principals holding meetings, there'll be a blended model openly. We want to do as many virtual offerings and meetings that we can within our staff, but there's going to be times where we have to get face-to-face with small groups and make certain, and we will be implementing social distancing within those small groups, but we've got to talk about action plans. We've got to formulate ways of work. We've got to discuss what happens related to, if we're exposed to an individual of COVID. We've got to talk about communication with stakeholders. How are we going to extend e-learning? What are we going to do to make certain that we provide ongoing interventions. And at the same time, we've got a really healthy document for our reopening plan that we're going to need to meet with contents or our grade levels to be able to go through it, so we have a clear indication of what we expect and what modifications we need to make in order to get this right. So it's going to be a blended model, and we'll do everything we can to maximize our time on task with our teachers so that they feel equipped and prepared as we transition back to opening our schools.
And to add on to that, all of our district trainings from academic services point of view related to curriculum and initiatives will all be virtual during the pre-planning week to minimize and comply with our CDC guidelines.
Thank you, sir. All right, next question. How many children will be in the classroom? As of right now, we have roughly around, 49 to 50% of our students that aspire to come back to brick and mortar. And that is through an analysis of around 90,000 plus students that have responded to the Declaration of Intent. We did say openly for those students who did not select or elect to fill out the declaration that they would revert back to brick and mortar. So this information does not account those individuals that have not taken the survey. But as we can see, that we will continue to comply with class size. Where we'd love to have, we may be able to have the opportunity to push the class size at a lower threshold, but it all depends on on our master schedules and our grade levels and the number of students that elect to come back. So we'll be doing over the next 2 weeks, we'll be looking at master schedules and looking at course progressions, looking at student needs to determine where we are related to class size. If we can reduce class size related to this below the state recommendations, then we will. But we have to understand that we will have a number of teachers that will be taking a caseload, our class load related to the e-learning. So there's going to be a balance there. So we've got to be able to a point where we maximize every section that we offer and every course that we offer and every class that we offer, but we'll do our best to be able to minimize that along the way.
And just to make one clarification on that, all of our funding is based off the students that are in the classroom and how we derive our funding through the district. So it's important to make sure to understand that we have to maximize our class sizes to the greatest extent possible due to the fact that funding drives our teacher allocations. And so we will do our best to make sure that we have socially distanced classrooms to the best extent possible by maximizing the space between student stations. But to the superintendent's point, that will really drive the number of students in the classroom is based on our funding and what students are choosing for brick and mortar and e-learning.
And thank you, sir. And we want to protect our students, and we want to protect our teachers and our support professionals as well. So more information will be coming in the next 2 weeks as we get and identify those students and review their declaration of intent, along with match them up with staff members through their aspirations. So next question talks about what happened to Model B, which gave 40% face-to-face instructional time and 60% to e-learning, and is that no longer an option in Hillsborough County? And if a concern arises when my kids go back, will they be able too late to change it to e-learning? I'm going to connect with Dr. Kemp at this question, who is our deputy superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Good evening. The superintendent and team originally presented 3 models to the board, each providing opportunities for parental choice, whether that was face-to-face learning, e-learning, or Hillsborough Virtual School. The models were originally built on spread risk that correlated with the phases that the Governor DeSantis announced. We did consider a Model B hybrid model early considerations, where students would attend 4 days of face-to-face and then 6 days of e-learning. But however, due to the status in Hillsborough County, as well as an executive order requiring districts to provide 5 days of face-to-face instruction, the district initiated planning efforts for Model A, giving parents the option to return to a face-to-face model as required by the executive order, where students attend 5 days per week, and we provide that option. Second was to participate in e-learning at their assigned school. And the third was to participate in the Hillsborough Virtual School. So at this time, that's the district is pursuing Model A with those 3 options based on the executive order.
Thank you, Dr. Kemp. And the big thing related to this question is that, through the emergency order, it's been very clear that we have to offer 5 days of brick and mortar for parents and students who aspire to transition back. So we just want to make sure that we're aligned with that effort, and hence the reason that hybrid model no longer works related to the implementation. All right, next question. Will there be any flexibility on timing for e-learning, or do kids have to be available during those set school hours? Mr. Connor?
It's a great question. So one of the differences between the spring e-learning and what will it look like in the fall will be the set school schedule. If you have a chance to take a look at our reopening plan, I encourage you to look at pages 44 through 45. It will provide you a sample schedule of what a student at certain grade bands what their day will look like. So for an example, if you take a look at the elementary example, a student would log on and receive their English instruction beginning at 7:40 a.m. That student will not be on the computer with live instruction for the entire duration of that literacy block, but they would be on while the teacher was providing that direct instruction. And once that direct instruction is over, and let's just say in that block it may be 15 minutes, the student would then transition into some independent work. So this answers a couple of questions that have also come up around, are students on the computer for 6 or 7 hours a day? And the answer is no. We will have a very structured schedule that students will log on and off to interact with their teachers throughout the day and throughout the week. And so that schedule will be identified by that teacher when the student enrolls in the class and begins school. But we've designed it so that students aren't on the computer for the entire day. But they will have the opportunity to interact with their teachers through live instruction, as well as other students in collaboration in small group settings through our web conferencing technology. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. More information will be forthcoming, so we can continue to explain, what that schedule looks like and the interaction. Once again, we don't expect learners to be on that computer for 6 or 7 hours a day. We understand that research says against that, but we got to make certain that we have quality, student stations, quality coursework, interactive assignments, so the learner can stay relevant and connected to statewide standards. Next question. Will teachers of e-learning be allowed to work at home or made to come to campus? So right now, we're working for protocols to select teachers who transition to e-learning. We know that there are some of our teachers that are openly not only scared to come back and fearful to come back, but they do have, pre-existing conditions that may hinder them to come back related to exposure to COVID. So we're working right now to identify a criteria to be able to protect some of our teachers within this element. And it's all based on the number of learners that have selected the e-learning process. But with this said, these individuals, they will have the availability to remain in their homes and be able to teach. But I also think there'll be a blended model in this approach. There could be a part where we have an individual that elects and selects to transition to brick and mortar, and then we may need to pick up 1 or 2 sections in order to meet the needs of our learners. So it could be a blended approach. But we're not going to, we have learned during this pandemic that we can be efficient and effective virtually. So as much as we can, if we definitely have an individual or employee that may be at risk, we want to be able to protect them along the way. If an individual that selects to go to e-learning and they want to come and use their facility and use their classroom that we are not using during the school day, then they'll have every right and availability to that classroom. We know that there's so many different resources that they build within our classrooms. We want our teachers to be able to maximize that and use that and leverage that as we extend high quality instruction every day to our learners. So this is going to be solely, a blended model. We'll learn along the way, and we'll actively engage our teachers and our principals that are in work to determine the best avenue. But we're here to protect our employees along the way, but also make certain that we have high quality instruction. Next question. How does the district plan to ensure the availability of cleaning, sanitizing products when there is a national shortage? So I'm going to let Mr. Farkas start this question out, and then I'm going to transition to Mr. Culpepper, who's our safety, leads our safety within our schools, just to talk about some of the proactive steps we're taking to make certain that we are cleaning our schools along on a daily basis.
Thank you, Superintendent. The reality is, for the last 4 months, we've been planning for this. We have purchased a reserve so that we have those, but it's still a concern for us. What we've done is we've gone to multiple vendors through our purchasing department, business division that have been very helpful in trying to find everything. Because the question is correct. It is a fear of ours, making sure that we have enough masks, making sure we have enough wipes. We have all the things that we need to make sure that our teachers and students are as safe as possible. What we have now is a surplus that we have in reserve, and we'll order on a weekly basis to ensure that schools have those. But we're not just going to order from one vendor. We're going to order from multiple vendors that have those awards, so we can ensure there's not a shortage. And in worst case scenario, we dip into our reserves that are enough to cover schools for a couple of weeks that are on there too. But the reality is, we already have those in place. We have the purchasing agreements in place, and we look forward to trying to make sure that we have every single item for cleaning, sanitizing, and products that are there. When I turn it over to Mr. Culpepper, his is actually on the spray and the fog that goes with the cleaning after there is a positive case, and he can talk a little bit about how we've prepared for that.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Thank you, Superintendent.
Yes, sir.
First off, I want to start out by one of the most important things we wanted to do. We wanted to change from where we started out when we received our first school notification that there was a school that we had a student or a teacher there that had symptoms or COVID. We went through a whole process of finding a product that we can use that has zero health risk towards our students, and also will provide a health, clean, safe environment for when students and faculty return back. And we took a lot of time in looking at that product, and we found a product that is approved by the EPA as well as registered by the EPA. The other big plus to that was we was able to find a local distributor here who has already provided us with a surplus of the product here. And we set a set point that if we reach this set point well below of us being at zero, then weekly those products are brought in. There was also a huge run on this product for some of the professional football leagues, some of the professional basketball leagues, but we was able to make sure that we had all this stuff in place in order to ensure the safety and well-being of our faculty, students, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Mr. Farkas. Also, Mr. Culpepper. And I want to tell you, we've grown tremendously related to making certain we have the necessary equipment that we've ordered, but also the necessary equipment within our schools to triage and have a rapid response team within our schools if we're ever faced with an undesired behavior. And hats off to you, Mr. Culpepper, for going out there and working with your staff to find the right technology, the right chemicals to be able to continue to protect our schools every single day. All right, next question. Okay, will there be any repercussions should a student continue to remove their mask? Will this be reinforced via discipline action? One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to take punitive actions, for not having a mask. We are requiring this though, so the actions that we will take, and I provide an ongoing guidance, is the first one is that we will, if a learner forgets their mask, we will have a disposable and readily available for that learner. We're going to give every learner 3 reusable masks. If they forget it, we'll be ready to hand them that disposable mask that they will wear. If they refuse to wear it, then we will immediately bring that individual to the proper administrator or support staff that we will contact their parent, explain the expectations within our organization, and then the third time, if this continues to be an issue, then we will coach our parents about what other learning platforms that we offer within our organization, whether that be transition to e-learning or to potentially Hillsborough Virtual. And we've got to make certain that we move along with our expectations, and we've got to protect every one of our learners and at the same time the working conditions of our adults. Next question. Will a teacher be required to use his or her sick days if they have to be quarantined because of a student? I'm going to transition through our Chief of Talent Management. This is Dr. Marie Wellen of Human Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. So employees can receive paid sick leave and expanded family and medical leave for specified reasons related to COVID-19 through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. This act has been in place since April the 1st, and we have been working with our employees so that they are able to make the decisions that are in their best interest for their health or for their families' situations. We've also made adjustments throughout as our state quarantine orders or local quarantine orders have been adjusted throughout. So we will continue to be able to offer that. That is provided through December 31st of 2020. And employees have been seeking those leave options on their intent to return forms as well that they have submitted, and we've been working through those continued questions to make sure that our employees know all of the available leave options that they can access.
Thank you, Dr. Wellen, and we'll continue to monitor what the any legislative moves out there, and we know that this will potentially sunset on in December 2020, but it also could continue to based on where we are as a nation. So, regardless, we'll continue to watch it from a local perspective. We will actively engage every stakeholder, our local health department, legislative delegates, and then also our school board in order to make an informed decision for our employees as we get transition to the October, November, December, area and time frame, determine what we need, additional steps if we need to take them as we transition to January. And thank you. Next question. Will those who picked e-learning be required to sit for 6 hours a day? I think we just answered that question. So we'll go ahead and go to the next question. Will the e-learning class be just for e-learners, or will the e-learners tune into live recorded stream of what is happening in a brick-and-mortar classroom? I'm going to transition to Mr. Terry Connor.
All right, and just to go back to the previous question around 6 hours of instruction, it is important to note that students will be required to be present during those classes. So, for instance, in a middle school, you may have 7 class periods. It is going to be incumbent upon students to actually engage in a live lesson during that class period, and the teacher will be taking attendance during that time. So while you are not on the computer for 6 hours, you will need to engage in each period during your scheduled time, and for the teacher to also take attendance. For the question here, will e-learning class be just for e-learners, or will they tune into the classroom? That will be dependent. So we are looking at options where students will be able to actually live stream and see what's happening in the class. If we have teachers who actually volunteer to allow that to happen, and we have a singleton course, a unique course at a high school or a middle school where we only have one teacher for that particular class, and that teacher is willing to allow students to come into the classroom via streaming, then we are definitely open to that options. But we will try our best to have dedicated e-learning teachers for most of our classes, with the exception of the singletons and the unique situations where we can live stream into the classroom.
Thank you, sir. All right, next question. How will bathrooms be monitored? This is a question that when I first got here, there was concern that there wasn't enough soap, there wasn't enough paper towels, and I've had many questions, and conversations with staff around expectations for every one of our facilities and every one of our restrooms in this organization. So one thing I will tell you is that there's going to be many times that you see that historically that individuals will transition to the restroom and they may be out of paper towels. The one thing that we're asking, if we see that from a learner, if we see that from a staff member, is to let the custodial staff, administrative staff, or a support staff know so that we can make certain that we have the necessary resources and material and equipment within every one of our restrooms. We are prepared and primed to make certain that we have everything available for our students. We will continue to make certain that we clean our restrooms on a more frequent basis. In addition, we're going to potentially move and adjust schedules for custodial staff to have more individuals on site to be able to make certain that our restrooms are not only clean, but they have the necessary equipment every single day for our learners. I'm going to transition to Mr. Farkas.
Part of the aforementioned surplus that I referenced earlier, what was included in that was the soap and paper towels. We know that things can happen. We could run out. We're going to ask administrators to make sure we have staff members to check, as the superintendent said. We're also going to ask the students to be responsible for it. If they go into a restroom, let someone know so we can fix that. What we're assuring the audience and the public know is that we have supplies. We have reserve supplies. So we're not going to run out. It will be here. It will be in the district, and we'll make sure that every school has everything that they need to move forward.
Thank you, sir. So overall, so any educator, any school-based leader, any student, please just create the ask. We will have everything on site or everything at the district level to make certain that every one of our restrooms have the necessities along the way. All right, next question. How are you going to keep lunchroom staff and children safe as over 100 students eat without masks in cafeterias? Most teachers do not want lunch in their classrooms. What is the plan for lunch? Well, first and foremost, we want to protect the lunch schedule of our employees. We want to make certain that they have time for them. They need time to relax and, for lack of a better word, to let their hair down. And so we will protect that along the way. So as relates to what we're going to do in the lunchroom, there's a number of steps we're going to take in order to protect not only our employees but our students as well. But you have to understand, I've said this, I continue to say this. It's very difficult to create the social distance in education, but we're going to leverage multiple, every area on our campus, whether it be an outside facility, inside facility, classrooms, large areas, to be able to provide lunch in a safe manner. And I'll let Mr. Farkas speak deeper to this question.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis. And it is important. Every unique campus that we have is going to have a different approach to this. But the reality, safe distancing will look a little bit different in each one of these schools. As the superintendent mentioned, it is one of our biggest challenges is the cafeteria and the school bus. In the cafeteria, let's talk a little bit about the other side of the line. Our cafeteria workers, an important part of what we do that feed thousands of kids, hundreds of thousands of kids every single day. The reality is we've got you'll see a different line. You'll see a different lunchroom. We're going to prepackage foods. There's not automatic handling. Students are going to point to those foods as opposed to grabbing them themselves. There'll be plexiglass, and traditionally we'd use pen pads for students to put in their student number. That will no longer take place. That will also be behind the line. So you'll see a little different approach to them when we get in there. There'll also be social distancing in the line, and that can be a challenge for us. So we ask for some patience as we work through the procedures and routines for this first week or two of school. But the reality is we're going to do all we can to make sure that we have as much social distancing as possible. The question is, obviously, kids are not going to have masks on. What we're going to ask them to do is take their masks off while they eat, but when they're done and they're in their conversation around that table, they put their mask back on, because reality is that's going to be the challenge for them to do that. So we want to make sure that we do all we can, and I think those procedures that'll be a little bit different will help us do that.
Thank you, sir. All right, next question. If a student I'm in contact with tests positive, will I need a quarantine? If so, do I lose 14 sick days? Well, right now we are in the process of continuing conversations with the Department of Health, and they were identifying, necessary steps. I'm going to transition to Miss Brown along with Mr. McCauley to address this first side of the question, and then we'll transition to Dr. Welling for the second part.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. When we're making decisions about whether or not someone should be self-quarantined after being exposed to someone who tests positive to COVID, there are three questions that we ask. How long the student or person who was in contact with the individual that tested positive, was it more than 15 minutes? We also ask whether or not they were able to social distance 6 feet or more. And we ask a final question, which is an important one, were they wearing a mask? So those are questions that we ask to help us make a decision about self-quarantine, whether or not someone will be quarantined. What we know is that if someone is self-quarantined, we do start the time clock 1 day following the symptoms, if symptoms begin. And so 10 days following the symptoms is when we would ask them to come back or take a look. And if no other symptoms have developed and they are symptom-free for at least 72 hours, then they can return from self-quarantine. Mr. McCauley?
Sounds good. Okay. Dr. Whaling for the last part.
So based on, again, the direct contact, as Mrs. Brown mentioned, we would then determine the leave time that the employee would need to take based on their particular situation with the direct contact, and then also still the Families First Corona Virus Response Act would apply for their days of sick time.
Thank you. All right, next question. When can we expect a final decision on whether there will be in-person classes? You know, right now, the plan that I will be submitting to the board is, and I released it last week, is for us to move and transition to in-person classes. And that's all solely linked to the emergency order. The emergency order is very clear that we must offer 5 days in-person, brick and mortar classrooms. Then at the same time, we can provide innovative strategies. With those innovative strategies, we offer e-learning. At the same time, we will offer Hillsborough Virtual School. So right now, as we sit today, we will continue and move forward with providing 5 days in-person classes as we potentially start on the August 24th date that will be presented to the board.
Yes, sir, Mr. Superintendent. I just wanted to also remind the listeners that those that do not comply with the emergency order also face consequences. The district could face financial consequences as a result. So it's in our best interest to comply with the order at this time.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Who will be covering classes if a teacher has to be quarantined for 14 days? So right now we have an educator. Okay, if we have an educator that is going to be has to be quarantined due to the fact they may have been exposed, whether it's inside or outside, we will use and leverage a number of individuals within our school district. We have a number of instructional coaches that are content specialists, and if their credentials are matched, we will transition those individuals into classrooms so that we can continue the work. And in addition to that, we also have long-term subs that are here along the way, and we have district staff as well that are different district specialists. So we will work make every single effort to put a qualified, skilled educator in front of our children so that learning is continuous. So we will look at school-based instructional staff, district-based instructional staff, and then transition to long-term subs. So I'm confident that we have a number of employees that will continue to work and provide ongoing professional development that will transition to these positions in order to help our children. All right, how are schools going to be able to social distance if class sizes are not smaller? This is the question I continue to address about our inability to do it on a consistent basis. We are going, for us to, I'll give you an example. I said it last week. For us to social distance, and you relate this transportation to the classroom, for us to social distance on a bus when we have 90,000 individuals that take advantage of the ridership, we would have to purchase 2,000 additional buses, which would be a cost of $190 million, on top of spending millions of dollars of salary and benefits, which would be inclusive of around $300 million in order to implement the proper recommended CDC guidelines for social distancing. So you take that and you coordinate that to the classroom. We just don't have the structure, the geographical space to be able to implement it. So we're going to take every precaution within our classroom to remove, structures within our class that are not directly impact our classrooms. We'll make certain that we put, all of our desks or kidney tables in a particular area that provide and promote social distancing. So this is where the pre-planning comes in significantly to be impactful, where every one of our teachers are able to come back, redesign, reconfigure their classrooms in order to implement a model that will be the safest for every one of our students. If a child goes home with symptoms of COVID, is there a requirement of a negative test result to return? What if the parent never gets the child tested? I'm going to transition to Ms. Brown and also to our Chief of Staff, Mr. McCauley.
So the question being, will a negative test be required for someone who has symptoms of COVID? And the answer to that question is no. We will not require negative tests before a student returns to school. However, when a student is sent home with symptoms of COVID, we will do a temperature check when they return and also ask all those questions that I mentioned earlier regarding any type of fever, any of a 100.4, whether or not they have shortness of breath or a cough, whether or not they're experiencing diarrhea, vomiting, or any other symptoms that may be COVID related. We will, however, make sure that we are monitoring when the symptoms began. If it's 10 days from the point of the symptoms showing up, from the point of symptom, being symptomatic, we will look to see that those symptoms are improving and that the symptoms are, the fever does not exist without any type of fever reducing medication. In other words, there can be no fever, but we can't do no fever by giving medication. We need to do it without the medication.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley.
And to piggyback on what Ms. Brown was talking about, obviously the question is speaking specifically to if we send them home with symptoms and we don't have control over whether or not a parent will take them for a test, nor do we really know if a test is warranted because symptoms can mimic other possible conditions. So we are basically just going to work very closely with families, closely with the schools. When a student does return, obviously, we want to take a look at them and support the families any way we can. Fever being one of the primary features, and then ultimately understanding that in children, the way it's manifested might look very different than adults. So we have to play that one by case and stay in close contact with our partners at the Department of Health.
Thank you. All right, next question. If we start 2 weeks late, will the school year be extended 2 weeks? The answer to that is not necessarily. You know, we are in the process right now of working with the calendar committee, which is a committee that formulates and creates a schedule, our student schedule and work employee schedule. So we have to look at the number of contact hours that, you know, every one of our learners must have in order to stay in compliance with statutory requirements. And that is to make certain that every one of our elementary students has, I believe it's 900 hours. And then every one of our high school credits is around 135 hour requirements. So at this time, I'll transition to Mr. Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. So the calendar committee is meeting currently, and we will go for board approval on Thursday to and present a draft calendar revision with a 2-week delay beginning on August 24th. School would start. We would be able to end the school year in this proposal on May 28th, which is the original end of the school year. We would look at a couple of non-student days within the schedule and actually convert them to student days. But we looked at a way to try to not impact our national holidays and most of our holidays that are within the schedule. And we think we have a good proposal that will meet all of our 900 hours for elementary as well as for high school, the 135 hours per credit.
Thank you, sir. And I want to make certain that our parents, our caregivers understand that if the plan is approved, we're on a tight, schedule related to making certain we have all of our instructional contact hours required by the state. So anything that's related to any potential hurricanes that come our way, we will have to modify the calendar once again. And could potentially add additional days to make certain that we get the proper contact. And that will be a case-by-case basis as we are determine if we have to actually shut down. But we'll continue to monitor every day closely and keep the community actively engaged and communicate expectations related to days. When will families have access to Canvas? So right now we are working to finalize and upload videos not only for our students but for our parents and caregivers as well. And this will be tutorial videos that will walk, our students and our parents along the way how to interact with Canvas. This will be a tool that we will frequently be using across the year for teacher interaction, uploading materials, and using it potentially as a hub to capture video analysis of classes. And I'll transition to Mr. Connor if he wants to add to this.
Yeah, so we are working right now to migrate all of our information into Canvas and to build out our coursework, and we're moving right along with that. I will say as we begin to pull the data for students who are opting for e-learning and brick and mortar, and we then move into each school's master schedule to reconfigure the master schedule to meet the needs of all of our families, the access to Canvas will be dependent on the rostering of those courses. So it'll be very close to school when you get access, but we will have a library of videos for our parents and for our students to begin to engage and understand the format, the layout, and the functionality of Canvas prior to the start of school. We should be rolling those out By July 31st, we will have video libraries so people can begin to get comfortable with it, and then they will gain access to it relatively close to school as the rosters are being finalized.
Thank you, sir. And this platform will also be, user-friendly for non-English speaking families as well. So we'll make certain that that will be addressed along the way. All right, next question. How will fire drills and active shooter drills be conducted? Right now we're in the process of waiting and providing ongoing direction from the Department of Education. I know that they are meeting this week to really identify if they're going to push back any active shooter drills or fire drills for the first, whether it's maybe the first couple of weeks, the first 2 months. That's all up for discussion. Mr. Culpepper, anything that you want to add to this?
Superintendent, just by you proposing to go back to the 24th to opening, that has already reduced one fire drill for the year for us. But I also have to remind everyone here and everyone watching is that we still have fires. It's very important for us to know that how students need to travel and exit building, means of egress, that part as well, and also the fact that we live in Florida. And severe weather is another drill that we must partake in order to ensure the safety of our students and faculty and staff.
Thank you, sir. And we'll continue to be engaged in this process.
Just wanted the training for all the safe school specialists is next week, so we'll get a little bit more clearance next week and more direction next week to make sure what those, it may be a hybrid blend of online training and also the real drills too.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, when a positive case is identified at high school level, will all classmates/teachers, potential of 200 plus given 7 classes, have to quarantine for 2 weeks, or what would happen to their and what happens to their learning curriculum? So right now this is one of the, we're continued to have conversation with the Department of Health to make certain that, they give us clearance about, those indicators that Ms. Brown spoke about earlier, related to, were they practicing social distancing? Did they have a mask? Were they in the classroom for more 15 minutes or more? If that's a yes, we're getting clearance of if there's going to be a requirement for those students who do not and are not symptomatic. So we will have more clearance and guidance provided this week as we have continued ongoing conversations with the Department of Health. All right, what happens when a teacher is out and there is no substitute? Are there really enough substitutes to cover the teacher absences when there wasn't before during the pandemic? So we're working actively with Kelly Services. We know the importance of COVID and how it has impacted not only our organization but many organizations and vendors. But we will hold Kelly accountable for making certain that we have the proper coverage. So they're having ongoing recruitment efforts as we speak today, and they are having ongoing professional development about safety and cleanliness within the classrooms. So that partnership will and continue to be expected. As relates to not having a proper substitute, once again, I will reiterate that we have coaches that are internally at the school level we will leverage, and then at the same time we will have individuals at the district level that we can use if there is a need. But we will continue to make certain that Kelly's held accountable to make certain that they have the necessary staff to fill positions along the way. The only thing I will ask is, I know that our teachers can't forecast them not feeling well, but if you're going to be out, make sure that we plan accordingly. That way that we can go ahead and have that forecastability and get those positions filled in a timely manner.
I was just going to add, the greater the lead time that we do know the absence is going to occur, the greater opportunity. So I would encourage our employees, if you are feeling ill the night before, don't think, oh, maybe I'll wake up feeling better in the morning. Go ahead and put that sub request in then so that it gives us the amount of lead time that we need to be able to fill that vacancy.
Thank you. Are you still planning on using schools as potential hurricane shelters? What is your plan in case of hurricane for all learners and teachers? I'm going to go to Mr. Farkas. The answer to that is yes. And I'll let Mr. Farkas finalize and address this question.
That's correct. The Emergency Operations Center here in Hillsborough County will dictate when we open and close those shelters. Chief Newman, our security department and emergency operations, works with them on a daily basis to talk about that. In fact, I've had conversations with them as well as to what hurricane shelters will look like in this new day and age of COVID. The reality is that we are building the ship as we sail it when it comes to that. We've had numerous conversations on that. Yes, we plan on using them for potential hurricanes. Let's hope we don't not have to do that. But if we do that, there's also that's when Mr. Culpepper and his team come in. If that does happen, we'll make sure the county's actually offered to pay for it, but either Mr. Culpepper in combination with the county will come in and make sure that those are disinfected and they're fogged before we ever have kids or learners back in that school. So if by chance we do have to utilize the shelters, rest assured that those will be cleaned before your students and learners come back.
Thank you, sir. Okay, when will we know which classes will and will not be available through e-learning, such as AP Accelerated Math for middle schools and or electives? Mr. Connor.
So currently we are looking at the results of our surveys for our students, which will provide us the information needed to know what classes we need to offer through our e-learning platform. So that really is what drives the offerings for e-learning. So we should have that finalized, and schools will begin to look at their specific school offerings and be able to let students know exactly what will be offered based on the teacher survey and the student request. Remember that we were not always able to offer every elective. Again, I go back to the example, if we have one singleton offered in a course at a school, and that teacher will be teaching the bulk of those students in a face-to-face classroom where only a few students have opted for that as an e-learning option. If there is not the ability to do the live streaming, there may have to be a potential where that student could look at other opportunities for other elective courses that are available. So we should know that it will be that data will be finalized soon, and schools will be reaching out to begin scheduling students appropriately.
Thank you, sir. And we're in the process of, we would love to throw cameras in our classrooms, but there's just, that has to be bargained. And, and our teacher, HCTA is in a good place. And the biggest thing we want to do is make certain that we protect our teachers and at the same time protect our children. So there has to be language that's crafted around that. And, I'm thankful for the partnership for us to find a potential resolution to create that possibility for those teachers who are willing and volunteer to do so. So thank you. All right, we've submitted our intent for both children, 4th grade and 1st grade. If our choice proves not ideal for the best possible learning environment for our children, we'll be able to switch at any time. As Mr. Connor spoke about earlier, that the emergency order is very clear, that if an individual transitions to e-learning or a student transitions to e-learning and they are not successful and they need, and after ongoing support and interventions, we will be an active partner with bringing that student back to the brick and mortar setting. So we're going to work case by case. We'll continue to monitor every learner to make certain that they are successful along the way. And those that need a safety net will be there to help them and provide the appropriate placement for your learner. Next question, what will the e-learning schedule look like for elementary grades? And, Mr. Connor spoke about the pages to go into our reopening plan. It is identified as an example, and it talks about, whole group instruction. It talks about small group instruction. It talks about, independent practice for the learners so they're not on the computer for a long time of a day. So please continue to revert you back to the reopening plan that will give you a detailed analysis and provide an example schedule of what learners will follow. Will there be temperature checks each day before students enter the building? And how is the district going to handle a positive case? Close the entire school for 2 weeks? I'll address the first question. We've already addressed the second part of the questions about what actions we will take as relates to closing school for 2 weeks. We're going to look at the actual structure of the building. Is it a wing that's isolated? Is it a particular area of a school? Is it a gymnasium? Is it a cafeteria that the learner may transition in before school or an adult? We will look at all of that for our contact tracing to determine what proactive steps that we will and need need to take. So it could be a potential particular area in a school. It could be the entire school. We just don't know the actual pathway. And when as Mr. Culpepper and his team transitions and starts that contact tracing, that will give us a better indication of what active steps that we need to take, and we will communicate it immediately with all of our stakeholders. I need to go back to the first part of that question. I didn't answer that first part. I wanted to answer that first part. Temperature checks. We will not take temperature checks of every one of our students. Just imagine a high school that has a number of multiple entry pathways. We just don't have the staff to do it. We will take temperature checks of every one of our employees as they transition because they have greater contact to more students. So that will take place. We will train staff to make certain that happens in order to be consistent in our approach. All right, we'll transition to our final question, and then I will get to a couple comments as we transition out. Will students with coughs or runny noses be expected to stay home? How will this affect our attendance expectations? I want to lead to Mrs. Brown and potentially Mr. McCauley, and I'll wrap up the attendance expectation.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Well, what we know is that students have runny noses and coughs often, and it's sometimes related to allergies. So we do look for additional symptoms when we think about COVID. So will we expect students to stay home with a runny nose or a cough? If a student is sick, we expect a student to stay home. So we will look at attendance, and when a student is sick, we always call in to excuse the absence when they're sick. And we will continue to work with families around student attendance when there is a suspicion of COVID or if there is a confirmed case of COVID.
Thank you. Mr. McCauley?
If I could just add, we know this is going to be the most unique experience any of us have ever had in our career. And certainly families are going to be making decisions sometimes that are reactive in protection of their kids as well as their school community, and we appreciate that. I guess the reality is we are going to be flexible with attendance. We will remain open to dealing with families if attendance becomes an issue, as we always do, but particularly now when we can deploy our social workers to help in any way that we can. We need to see kids engaged in learning, whether it's face-to-face or remotely. And when we see an absence of that, even for good reasons, we are going to reach out and see what we can do to help.
Thank you. And, I would continue to say that, parents, please have health checks, before your child transitions. And if they don't feel good, as Mr. McCauley said, and Ms. Brown said, we're here to help you along related to the attendance. We just want to make certain that we have your seal of approval, that you've acknowledged that, and that your child will not be transitioned in the school that day, and that we will work collectively to make certain that we give any makeup work for it. Before I transition out, I'm going to ask Mr. Connor to lightly touch on Canvas about how that will be used for parents and potential students. And then, along the way, you'll start to see, for those who may not have completed the declaration of intent, you'll start to see this week that we have principals or staff members that are reaching out, making phone calls just to confirm your stance. And then those who we may not be able to get in contact, we'll try to potentially mail, some type of communication home and try to connect with you in any way, shape, or form, just so we can have an accurate picture of where your learner may be. But Mr. Connor?
Like it was said earlier, we are developing a professional development library for our parents so that they can understand the functionality of Canvas, and we are also creating a portal where parents will be able to log in to check the progress of their students. So as teachers assign grades, they will be able to check in on their student, they will be able to interact with the teacher if there are any questions. So all of that information is forthcoming very soon so that you begin to be comfortable with communicating through this platform.
Thank you, sir. So this comes to our end of our Q&A for today. We really want to thank every one of our parents, our employees, our students, our community members who may have posed questions in our pigeonhole. We really appreciate it. New format to be able to really answer the pressing questions that have been activated or identified by our community. We will take all of this information and we will upload it in our FAQs online, and that will be available in both Spanish and English. So thank you for your patience as we get that information uploaded on our website at hillsboroschools.org. And then we will be back here tomorrow for session 2 of Dialogue with Davis, and that will start at 10 a.m. and transition to 11 a.m. We'll go back and continue to upload. I encourage everyone to continue to upload the questions that may not have been answered today. Continue to vote, and we will transition to be able to address as many as we can in our next town hall. Thank you, parents. We know that this has created angst for everyone, and please know that this staff here, in our staff at our school site, district level, in our school board is working very hard to make certain that we have organizational controls and holding us accountable. And I'm really thankful for the school board for doing that. But thank you to all of our staff and our teachers. We know that this is pressing. Parents, hang in there with us. Our reopening plan continues to evolve daily, and we look forward to providing the best experience possible. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you in the classrooms.
Konis, School Board Vice Chair representing District 1, and together we are preparing students for life.
This is our 11th year doing this. It's our school lunch experience, and we have about 250 kids total coming to test 17 different menu concepts. And we hope that they are going to select some to put on the menu for next year.
Today I'm taste testing for the school district and school nutrition, and I'm excited to see the new dietary options that they're offering.
Honestly, they love it. They get to fill out surveys on iPads. They're all going to walk away with a goodie bag. It's just a really fun event for them, and hopefully they get a good idea as far as what we do for school lunch and breakfast program in Hillsborough County.
This year's concepts include the mini chicken and waffles. On the other table back here, we have a chicken tinga with comida vita.
Everything has been vetted to make sure it's meeting all the standards as far as the whole grain, the sodium, fat. That way we can put it on our menus.
I think it's pretty amazing what is going on with this program, because it gives us the opportunity to see what we have and to choose things that students will actually eat instead of having a small variety of things.
Here's a mini chicken and waffle sandwich for you with a little sweet honey mustard sauce. Enjoy. Would you like to try some, sir? If you're hungry, we've got a solution.
My favorite was probably the biscuit and gravy. It has a lot of flavor to it, and the biscuit was very moist and it tasted good.
Love it. I love it.
Well, I think that it's really great because we're identifying new cultures and inviting students to try them more.
Hillsborough County is on the forefront of leading the way with innovation when it comes to school nutrition to serve the students in the most nutritious and beneficial ways possible.
Hi, I'm Karen Perez, school board member serving District 6, countywide, and you're watching Hillsborough Schools TV.